Long story short, I think the best time to have a bye is between week 7 and 9 because it's like you're a good portion through the season
Mhm.
and you kind of know what you are after week 7. It's like, okay, we're going to fight for a wild card spot. Okay,
Mhm.
we're fighting for the division. Okay, we stink. We're waiting for next year's draft to see what happens. So you know by week 7, week 8, where you kind of fall into the 2025 season totem pole, who's going where. So I think that's the best time to have a bye to kind of reassess positions or to tweak things so that you can kind of make that push to the playoffs or to get some bodies back to kind of help you for a time when you become a top seed into the playoffs. And to do that, you got to play these games, right? And you have so many games this year overseas.
Yep.
Literally, there are like what? Correct me if I'm wrong. You got
There are 7.
7. Okay, I'm off. You mentioned earlier you guys play in November in London, which is so awkward, by the way.
Actually,
We
Madrid, so that's
Madrid,
even
my fault.
crazier.
That's crazy. And we play in Dublin, and we haven't played in Dublin since get this 2013 when we had Antonio Brown, Ben Roethlisberger in his prime, and we lost that game. And it was to the same team. We played the
Nice.
Vikings. Now, I can tell you the fans hate it because it's like you're losing a home game. And let's be honest, in this economy, who can afford Madrid and a game in Dublin? Not everybody. So it's turning into like the country's game, right? And the few fans that can't afford to go. And I think that like when you in a land where you have either 9 or 8 home games, that hurts if you only have 8 home games because then you only have 7 true home games. And I know
Yeah.
the league is trying to move more international, but you got to ask, like, how are you slapping the fans in the face by doing this? And is this going to be the future? Could we see a Super Bowl in London? Because Goodall says, well, I like the fan reaction there. I think there's a lot of excitement. So let's put the Super Bowl there. What do you think?
First, I just find it funny that when Pittsburgh does technically host the home game in Dublin, it's in Croke Park, so hopefully you guys don't croak that game away. Um,
Yeah.
but to your question, I cannot ever see a Super Bowl overseas unless
Hmm.
the league finally puts their foot down and makes a team international. I know Jacksonville constantly plays these England games or overseas games. I know they got the Rams in London this year. Um, that's like in mid-October, and they've consistently been one of those teams that you see overseas. But until the NFL goes, okay, we're going to have a team wherever it is, not in the United States, where they shift a schedule around and they make sure that the people traveling or the away chunks or the home chunks for this team make sense and give a fair division. I can't see them taking away the thousands of dollars per ticket for a Super Bowl with all the revenue that they get in the States. Because as much as they want to expand, there's no fan base right now that
Mhm.
is anything like the United States for American football. Um,
Merc.
I think the first step in getting a championship overseas, you have to put that one team or two teams, whatever the relocation situation is, because I don't think they add at this point. You're already at 32.
Mhm.
More just nope. Then you got to reseed everything. Until they put that team there permanently, it will never have. We'll never see an international Super Bowl.
I just think if they ever do it though, I could see a situation where they soft launch it in like a Toronto, where it's like it's not like so far to where like people can't do it. Like it's not above the norm because we technically have like other leagues that have teams in Toronto or something like
Sure.
that. But at the same time, it's like, if you're in Buffalo, like say if Buffalo goes to Super Bowl this year and it's in Toronto that year, it's like over the bridge for them, right?
Fair.
And I think they do it that way, or knowing the NFL, they experiment, say, well, let's put an NFL game for the playoffs. Let's have like one of them play on the lower seeds play on a neutral field or something.
Mhm.
They're constantly changing things, right?
Sure.
So I can see that. I just don't like to your point. I don't know if I could see the NFL execs talking about this, Especially, I think they're going to pay attention to how these 7 games go and how the international crowd kind of takes over. Because I mean, let's be honest, me and you aren't going to the game. I mean, we might watch it at 9. Was it kickoff for the Steeler games at like 9:30? I guess for you guys also at 10 or 9:30.
Yeah,
So
I'll
it's
get
like,
up and watch at 9:30, but I will not pay $11,000 plus for a game ticket when that doesn't take care of food, travel, stay.
hey, yeah, like money doesn't grow on trees these days. You feel me? And it's just
I
like,
don't
so
know.
you're paying to get over there. You got to have global entry and a passport. And then by the time you get over there, you got to find things to do, right? You're trying to find your way over to the stadium, and you're jet lagged. So it's just like,
Mhm.
how cheerful are you going to be in the stands going there? That's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. Okay, so that's the NFL. We'll touch OTAs is coming up, right? This week.
Yeah, they start this week.
All right, so we're going to talk about that very soon. Talk about how we feel players look. I think it's the first true looks. I don't take rookie minicamp really seriously. I know it passed, but let's be honest. They're in gym shorts. They're in a helmet. They're doing walkthroughs. They're not really like doing drills or hitting or contact anything right now. But next week is when we get to, or this week coming up is when we get to see kind of how these quarterbacks look for the first time. I know there's going to be interest in Cleveland and Indianapolis, who have a quarterback carousel, and New Orleans, who doesn't know who their quarterback's going to be, and Pittsburgh, who doesn't know who their quarterback's going to be. Yeah, I mean, we know, but we're just like, come on, Aaron, sign. All right, so we'll see how that plays out. All right, so we're going to switch gears to, you want to go NBA or you want to talk Caps?
We can talk NHL. We can bang that out.
All right, let's go NFL and yeah, NHL. I can't talk tonight. Oh my god. All right, so
You're good.
that this
Yeah,
guy,
so much like that. My
he had a
dog, the
phenomenal season.
goat, my dog.
He had a phenomenal
He did.
season.
He did.
I'll start my short
He
soliloquy,
broke.
right? Because I didn't really. I
Hmm.
will say this. I did actually watch the series, and I was invested. I was like, as somebody who's in DC right now, I'm like, yeah, yeah, Caps, and I'm like
This is
watching
my
the plug
team.
over. Right, I just want them to advance. I didn't. I don't even know Carolina was good at sports or not down there on the ice rink. I'm like, whatever. But they didn't do well. They went home in a gentleman's sweep 4-1. So not the ideal way that the Caps want to end this season. A lot of questions going into next season. Probably a lot of tough decisions to make this offseason in terms of probably possibly cap situation. All right, we're gonna bring in the huge Cap fan. I set you up. Go.
Yes, thank you. So the man on the screen, Ovechkin, is now the NHL all-time goal scoring leader. Past Wayne Gretzky, scored. Oh, shoot, I should know this. More than 40 goals, but
Mm,
what was key about this race is that he's scoring at a pace that he did 20 years ago. Um,
yes.
and to at 39, almost 40, to score the same amount of goals as your age is crazy. But back in November, he had a hairline fracture to his leg, and so he missed a span of games from early November to about New Year's Eve. And so that really, dampened the outlook of him catching this record. But then when he scored, he was scoring 6 goals in 8 games or 8 goals in 12 games. And so that number kept climbing. And so for him to get that feat this year, I think, there's a lot of pressure off the team now moving forward. That's been eclipsed. It's just going to keep building, but you're not trying to get to that tying number or that passing number. And you know, I think they did a good job with maintaining their competitive level and not letting the media get to them in this great chase. Um, but I do think that the team is old. A lot of their number one players on their top lines are older now. They're in their mid to late 30s, and when you have a defenseman like John Carlson in his late 30s who's supposed to be your top guy, well, if you're playing him towards the NHL, not just the Caps leading, but the NHL leading defenseman time on ice per game, he can't sustain that. And so they're finding that while they want to keep the band together and kind of intermix these draft picks and the people from Hershey, like they're coming to the point where they have to do one or the other.
Mm,
Obviously, they're not going to get rid of Ovechkin. He probably has one more year. That's the length of his time on his contract. I
mhm.
mean, he's won a cup. He's the all-time goal leader. What else can he want except another cup, right?
Yeah.
Um, but they do have a good farm system. But I do think, some of those tough decisions are going to be guys who are older to either restructure the contract so they can stay with the team or they're going to move on because they're older. Um, but throughout the year, they started slumping towards the end of March, and so they had about 5 weeks or so before the playoffs began. They were still the number one seed in the Eastern Conference, but their play was slowly just falling off a cliff.
Mm,
So it's nice that they won the conference. They got to play eight-seeded Montreal, but a lot of those games were one-goal games, and if you're a powerhouse and you have a number one seed, you should not be screeching by the
mhm.
worst team in the division who had or in the conference who also had to make a run, and the point differential between the two, like on paper, the Caps should have been able to beat them handily. And I know that series was also 4-1, but they went to overtime in the first game after being up 2 goals, which is the scariest lead in hockey. I stand by that. Um, but when it got to Carolina, like Carolina's not bigger than them.
Mhm,
They're arguably not faster than them,
mhm.
but it was kind of like when the Caps finally faced adversity after being able to skate by toward the end of the regular season, they just shut down. They just gave up, and it didn't help that their power play has been abysmal for at least the last 5 years. I think that's what they really need to change in the offseason. It was clicking early in the regular season, but then that took a nosedive too, and it's like, why are you changing something that isn't broke? Because now it
Yeah.
is. Um, so I do think that the fact that in the first game against Carolina, they probably had the worst game I've seen them play in years. They took them
Mhm,
to overtime. So, Caps fans are like, wow, we played like ass and we still went to overtime in the playoffs.
mhm.
But that level of play can't be sustained, and you can only ask your goaltender to save you so many times. But I'm at least looking at that as a positive because they re-signed both Logan Thompson and Charlie Lindgren for multiple year contracts this year, so they don't have to worry about that at all. So I'm looking forward to that. And there's going to be a good core group that still stays, but they just looked tired. They looked old. They looked like one
Yeah.
of the older teams they are. And, moving forward, we need to integrate where it makes sense, not
I
force
think
them.
it happens though. It could sometimes happen that way. It sounds to me like you guys there was a high period because I mean, mind you guys, I am still learning hockey. I now live in DC. I have no excuse not to go to a Caps game now. I need a hockey team, so I'm just gonna go ahead and adopt the Capitals as my team. Look, I think it's one of those things. It sounds to me that I think if playoffs have taught you anything, sometimes like you just peak too early, and sometimes you peak right on time. And in
Mhm.
watching the series against Carolina, I just felt like one team was just faster, was just moving the puck around with ease, while the other team seemed a little sluggish. Seemed
Mhm.
like they were fighting, but there wasn't much left in the tank. And it just seems like they kind of ran out of gas, which means, man, maybe you got to take a look at the team, like you said, and just make some decisions as to, okay, we need to get some youth in here in some areas, and we maybe, I hope that they go all in on their star, right? We talk about this decorated. Hockey is probably going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer when he's done, and you want to try to send him off of at least an opportunity. That's all you can ask at this opportunity
Right.
at this point in his career, opportunity to go compete for a title. So let's see what he does, and let's see how the offseason goes. And I think that the Caps fans and DC fans and surrounding folks in the city will be really happy moving forward about something other outside of the Commanders or their football team doing better, because it's been it's been sad around here for a little bit. The Caps were the only team that kind of hanging it on, kind of keeping it relevant, but it's good to see that
Mhm.
both teams are flourishing. I'm very happy at the moves and possibilities. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I think the what's important to note is last season, not this current one that's ended, the one before,
Yep.
they got the eighth and final playoff seed on the last night, but they had a worse than negative 40 goal differential.
Mm,
So they won the games that they were fighting in, but they got crushed
yep.
and against good teams. So
Yeah.
that was the first year with their head coach Spencer Carberry, and now he's brought in some people in his second year that
Mhm.
you could see helped make improvements. If the team
Yep.
bought in like they did,
Mhm.
they exceeded expectations for this year. But
Yep.
because in recent years, Caps fans are so used to being able to do better and have more of a fight in the playoffs, it's disappointing. But I think it's important to remind yourself that they shouldn't have even been where they were. The fact
Yeah.
that they went from worst to first is not normal. It's the
Unseen, right?
second time in 70 years or something like that, worst to first. So I think this coach is the right answer. They just have to figure out the puzzle.
Hopefully they don't fall off a cliff. I mean, as a fan, especially with the new staff, sometimes you just squeeze the orange. You've gotten all the juice out of it. And it's like next year, it's like, well, what the hell happened? Because it's
Right.
the same team. Hopefully they take the next step forward and they can add some moves that can continue to push this team to the next level. But I haven't watched since the Caps were out, so I'm just like,
Me
whatever.
either.
So I wouldn't be able to tell you the remaining teams are in, but hopefully, the Caps have a good all season and they can be right back in this position and maybe even advancing to the next round. And we're talking more Caps while it's actually happening because we want that. That's what we
Right.
want. All right, so we're gonna talk a little bit of NBA right now. Obviously, there's a finals, well, not going to say finals, but there's an Eastern Conference Finals and there's a Western Conference Finals, and there are four teams that have the opportunity to either win a championship. They hasn't won a championship since before my time, and the other three are looking for their first championship. But that's not the story. Before we even get to the finals, we recently had a MVP that was named, and not this guy. We're talking about this guy. Yeah, SGA. This man is controversial, and it's not because he's not gifted. I just want to put that out there. It's just a lot of people who feel like he's a quote unquote free throw merchant. And for those people who don't know what that is, people feel like he baits fouls, and the refs kind of give him favorable calls. They don't give other players, so on and so forth. Um, I think if you look at his stats this year, out of the 30, I think he averaged over 30 or at least 30, which is really impressive. But I think of that 30, they say 11 or 10 of those points were at the free throw line. He averages 10 points in free throws per game. But overall, let me say this: I think that I love this for Oklahoma City because I feel like they deserve to have somebody since Kevin Durant left the team so many years ago, and I love the fact that they made a trade to the Clippers a long time ago, and they said, "Hey, we're going to take a flyer on this kid SGA. We like his game. We have a point guard of our future," and he came in and turned himself into a superstar, and it just really rejolted the Oklahoma, because you go to Oklahoma City. I'm gonna be honest, there's nothing really in Oklahoma City. um, but when this basketball season, they're and the Thunder are good, they will come out. So I'm happy for him. I'm not gonna be one of those basketball fans like he's a free throw merchant, even though looking at it right now in the finals, it's kind of like, okay. I mean, he doesn't have to get every call. You gotta allow the defense is to play defense. It's the playoffs. It's going to be a little contact. It's going to be physical. So that's the playoffs. But overall, I mean, it was between him and Jokic. I would have went Jokic because I think Jokic was the better player. I mean, he averaged a triple double, which is hard to do, and not just one of those skimpy triple doubles. We're talking 28, 10, and 11 the whole entire season. 28 points, 10 rebounds, and then 10, 11 assists. That's really crazy. But I think this is the closest race we've had in a while. So it's been great, pretty much down the wire, to see those two players come down to the end. And obviously, I think Shai, I think he deserved to take home this year's trophy. So
Yeah, and just to add to that, Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, you were close with him averaging nearly 33 points a game.
there
Um,
you go.
and while he, uh, you know, does benefit from the free throw line, I don't think it should be overlooked that he shot 52% from the
Mhm.
floor during the year. I mean, he's the only other player in NBA history to average at least 30 points a game on 50% or better shooting. So I think that's why he stood out to some people to get votes. And, while on paper or kind of just watching as a casual fan, it looked like the MVP voting was close. Out of 100 votes, Gilgeous-Alexander got 71. So
Yeah.
71 first place votes. So that leaves with Nikola Jokic only getting 29. So
Yep.
even if he averaged a triple double, the only other person to do what he did this season was Michael Jordan. And that was
Oh, it's
in
crazy.
years where he achieved the same award. So
Yeah.
by that metric, That's all you need to know, in my opinion.
Yeah. Look at you. You pretty much you dropping stats, man. All right, look. I'll say this. I think it's I love it. You know, I think it's a fresh face, right? We've heard Steph Curry and Jade last year was Jason Tatum, if I remember correctly. So I like the fact he's young, right? He's has some years left in him in basketball, and he's in the Western Conference Finals for a reason. He beat Jokic head to head. It's just a fact. And speaking of that, I mean, obviously we were in the midst of a road to the finals right now, right? Oklahoma City is playing Minnesota. And my girlfriend is a avid Knicks fan. She loves the Knicks.
Ooh.
Okay. All right. So I'm gonna get into this because I had to kind of jump on the bandwagon of the Knicks because my Lakers didn't do anything. They just kind of let me down this year in so many ways. But they unfortunately just wasn't our year. But we'll see what happens there with it. But I will say this: I think my number one thing is on both sides. I do not want to see gentlemen sweeps. I do not want to see sweeps. I think Minnesota did their part. I hope that the Knicks do their part tonight when they play the Pacers in Game 3. The Pacers just have a great bench this year from top to fifth, and they're not really like the most flashiest team in terms of names, but they have guys like 4 or 5 guys that can just go get you 20 points. And then when you have an assist guy like Halliburton, I mean, that can make anything happen and can make big shots down the stretch, just like Brunson can. I mean, you just can't really have collapses, and you can't go minutes without scoring. So that's going to be interesting. But the Knicks have to get one because they lost both their games on home court, and that's crazy because New York was out there and they were ready, and we haven't seen this matchup in the Eastern Conference Finals since 1999. Believe it or not, that was the last time
I
the
was
Pacers.
2.
I was 5. Yeah, the Knicks and the Pacers played in '99 in the Eastern Conference Finals. So this is like a throwback. These towns don't like each other traditionally. It's kind of like the big city versus the smaller market team, and typically the smaller market team has gotten the better of the big market team. So there's a lot of blood and hatred there because I think if you take away those series, the Knicks might have gotten a championship, but they always got stopped by the Pacers. And then last year, this was the semifinals. So the Knicks are a must win. They can't afford to go down 0-3. I don't think anybody, I think the percentage of a team coming back 0-3 is like nothing. So if they fall 0-3, this series is pretty much a wrap. I mean, I think you play game 4 to say, hey, look, let's just get back home. But it's just hard to overcome that. So the Knicks are in must win. I want to see New York at least make this a battle. It was kind of sad that they kind of let those 2 games kind of go in the last minutes. I thought they were in control, and then they just started playing hero ball, and guys are turning the ball over, jacking up shots that weren't good. Brunson had a go-ahead 3 in game 2 that just was rushed, and he had plenty of time on the shot clock to kind of get a better shot.
And a timeout in your pocket.
You had a timeout in your pocket.
to
So
add that.
I don't know what the Knicks have been doing down the stretch. It's kind of like they switched places with what Boston was the last series. They just could not close the deal. And with the Pacers, they're so deep that you just kind of question, like, can this team hang on? Because Tibbs is only going to play about 7 guys, and the Pacers play about 9 or 10 guys. So over the course of a series, if you're not winning those early games, you're talking about people getting sluggish and fatigue starting to settle in because of the fact that you're playing more bodies on the other side of the court. So that's going to be interesting. And of course, OKC and Minnesota. I'm gonna be honest. I didn't know what to expect out of the series. I was like, I mean, I didn't expect these 2 teams. I'm gonna be honest. I'm an OKC guy. I thought OKC was gonna get eliminated by the Nuggets, but they showed that they're legit this year. And of course, the reigning MVP showed why he's the reigning MVP. So this one here it's one of those, like, if whoever can just play their game and not get caught up in what the refs are calling is going to win. That's just simple. It's just that simple. Also, I would say just the pace and tempo is going to be another thing for in that series, because I know both teams like to play with pace and like to get easy transition buckets. Minnesota is not, believe it or not, I know they look like they can hit threes, but they're not the best 3-point shooting. It's either they're on or they're extremely off. So, and it starts with their stars, of course, and it kind of impacts everybody else. So if everybody else is not really hitting, then they're not really the best team. So I think we have a long ways to go between both of these series. My guess is that we could see a OKC and Pacers finals, which again, that never saw that come, was on my bingo card. I thought Boston, it would be Boston and OKC on a collision course, but Tatum went down, and so that series kind of changed in favor of the Knicks. But I think there's a lot of opportunity for some good ball to be played between these two squads. I mean, I like it.
Hmm. Yeah, the Knicks just need to figure out how to close. I mean, in this series, losing by three last week in overtime, the way that they lost with the probability in their favor too, with being able to hold on for that win and then lose, that's a gut punch.
Yep.
And then just the boneheaded plays that you touched on in game two, and I mean, I don't know. I don't know about you, but I've never slept with a timeout in my life, so
Nope.
I
Can't take
don't
it with
know.
you.
I I don't know why you don't try to draw up, even if it's not a perfect play, you just get everybody on the same page. You take that time
Mm.
out and you at least give yourself a chance. Like the chucked up shot there was, I don't know, I don't get it. So hopefully tonight they're able to do something. Um, I know the time we're recording this, they're in the second
They're in the
half
middle
right
of the
now.
game.
Yep.
So I might have to be on comfort alert because the Knicks aren't doing too well right now. They're
No,
down
no,
they're down 74-59 right now in the third
Jesus.
quarter.
Oh
So
boy. And
unless
that's Sorry, I was just gonna say, and that's
you're
crazy
good.
because the conspiracy theorist in me goes, NBA ratings already aren't great,
They
and
are.
you're gonna get rid of one of those top market teams if the Knicks can't find a way to come back.
Yeah.
So if they get eliminated, ratings are gonna be bad. But if they somehow come back, it's because I said it. It's a conspiracy. But it looking at Minnesota and Oklahoma City, it wasn't close in the first game. It was 114 to 88 in favor of the Thunder. And then it was still a 15-point game in game two. But then shout out to my friend Chase in one of my sports group chats that I have, calling the 6-2 hockey game last night, how it's not a good night in sports because Minnesota ended up winning by 42 points. Where did that come from? They're getting wiped across the floor in the first two
Yep.
games. So if either of these series is going to go to a game seven, I think it's Minnesota and Oklahoma City because like whatever I thought about that series and what Oklahoma City was doing well to just run away with it, they got smacked. So I
And
think
listen,
that's where the fans have fun, but it's so hard to predict. Like what? Why?
Anthony Edwards often gets compared to Jordan because he kind of plays his game similar to him a little bit. I'm not gonna say because of the rings, but yeah, he's the closest style wise in the court we've seen to Jordan is the midi. I think he shoots the three a lot better than Jordan does. But I think this is where you make your name if you're Anthony Edwards. Last year you got to the Western Conference Finals, you fell a game short in Game 7. We said, okay, this kid has next, and it's you got a talented OKC team, but I think this is where people start to look at Anthony Edwards and say, "Are you legit? Can you take this team to the next level?"
Yeah.
He doesn't have a bad supporting staff, supporting cast, I should say. So we'll kind of see what happens there. But you got to ask yourself, like, if we're gonna kind of he's taking out LeBron, he's taking out Steph Curry, even though he only played for one game, but it depends on how you look at it, right? And he's taking out Jokic in his playoff, 10 years so far. So he's had a lot of impressive wins. But I just think that it's now or never, and they have to get both games. And I can't think of another person who's capable of doing it. So I think that um, Minnesota, they win a close game four. I think it goes to overtime. I think he hits a clutch shot to send this to game five, something around the arc of like a 110 to like 112 type of deal. I think OKC tries to go for that game four because they want to bring it back and have the chance to close the series out in OKC. But we're going back to OKC tied 2-2. So I have that series going. Now with these Knicks, man, I don't know. Now, I'm not going to count them out because I think we've seen this team be down like 20 points and they find a way to miraculously come back. But it starts on the defensive side of the ball for them. They got to
Mhm.
get stops and they have to hit their shots. They cannot turn the ball over. I want to give you a crazy stat so far in the series. They've actually turned the ball over 10 to 15 times 5 of those times being in the fourth quarter. That's going to cost you in any game you're in, especially when you're trying to compete for a championship and you have a very talented Pacers team that likes to run. So if you can't, stop turning the ball over and not take bonehead shots and just do crazy regular season stuff you don't do in the playoffs,
Right.
they're gonna be out of here. But I think they can come back in this game. I'm gonna hold out hold 78-63 as we speak right now. So hopefully I'm not, having to console my girlfriend and say it's all going to be okay. Hopefully she can say, hey, we got one that was stressful and it gave me a gray hair, but we're here, we're alive, and we'll see what happens. But it's going to be stressful. It's definitely going to be stressful. Anything else you want to add for the finals?
Not for the finals, no. I think you did a really good job touching on all that. So thank you for being the expert on the NBA.
I know, y'all gotta learn. Like, I gotta become more of an NHL guy. I'm not gonna lie to you guys. I'm studying it. I think I need to go to a couple games. I've seen the puck, so I'm gonna do that. That is on my bucket list. Kayla, obviously, if you're in the DC area, I'm gonna get a Cap jersey. I guess you can advise me what Cap jersey to get at this point. And we'll kind of go from there. But hey, that is this week's episode. Thank you guys so much for joining us. We are going to continue to do this and grow this podcast. Please, by all means, we're going to post this to our platforms on YouTube, and eventually we'll expand out to more platforms. So stay tuned for that. But help us by clicking the like button. Help us by sharing. And just, feel free to drop a comment and tell us that, hey, David, you need to stop being an idiot towards the Caps and NHL and learn hockey. Or, hey, Kayla, basketball better. You're like the next Stephen A. Smith or Skip Bayless or the next whatever you want to put there and support us.
I would need to channel my Dallas Cowboy hatred if I have to feel those. But yeah, in the comments, if you guys have anything specific that you want us to touch on, definitely let us know. And if you have any segment ideas, we haven't really gotten into that just because it was our introductory English episode today, but we do have some segment ideas. Maybe we'll discuss them in the episodes coming up and then try to launch them and see what you guys think. But definitely providing us with any topic ideas is something that would be really helpful, so we will definitely look at those. Otherwise, we're just going to see what we're feeling and put it on our little note sheet before every episode.
Exactly, and just go for it. Just swing it. All right, guys, until next time, have a good one. We'll see you.
We'll see you after dark.